Okay, so this is the learning frame for My Robot and She Loves Me. The first 3 questions will be She Loves Me. The second 3 will be My Robot. Let's jump in. Yeah. Okay, how might this production be said to utilize utopian performatives? Where is there an opportunity for collective joy or hope or communitas? The build up to with She Loves Me, the build up to the realization between Amalia and George is basically the whole show. And so when it finally happens, there's this like, yes, joyful utopian moment, hope. It kind of, the whole show just feels like this big smile, and you're just like grinning the whole time, because it's just like, it's such a, and while it's not really like realistic, all the complexities of life, it gives you like this hopeful narrative and shows you what the world could be in that utopian nature. So I would argue that there is some of that in play here. What are the power dynamics of the characters? Who holds the most power and how is it used? I think the power dynamics are really interesting between our main, couples, because there's kind of like a cat and mouse situation going on. So like with Ilona and Steven, we see this especially prevalent, because to some degree, Steven has the power with his, during Ilona, the song, he's, a little, I would argue a little bit, seductive and trying, like, he holds the power over there. And then when she like has her I Resolve song, that is her taking the power back. So we see those kind of shift depending on the character's choices. And it's a good example of how choices can affect power dynamics, because if you choose to not let someone's seduction affect you, then you hold the power again. So bada boom. It's also prevalent with Amalia and George, where, especially with the knowledge of when George learns that Amalia is dear friend, that kind of shifts the power, because they behave differently after that. Instead of the spouting match during Where's My Shoe, George behaves differently. Amalia has at least winning their like little arguments. She has the power, but then she's like, wait, he's nice, I love him. Power dynamics shift again. Super interesting to observe. You also have Mr. Miracek as this powerful presence throughout the show, but he is brought low by his wife's affair, clearly. So lots of power dynamics, and you see a lot of, I feel like Steven abuses his power for sure. He's a bit of a sleazeball. Mr. Miracek abuses his power when he thinks that he is doing so in righteous anger, but it turns out he's just abusing his poor employee, George, who has done nothing wrong. Okay, number 3. What tools did the creator use to invite the audience into Holy Theater? Discuss both content, actor/staging, production value, etc. I think one of the things that they use to create this Holy Theater, you could say, is how they use the ensemble with the little love vignettes, as I so dubbed them. Like during a lot of instrumentals, they would have ensemble come in and be these cute little couples, and especially when George or Amalia was on stage, they would observe them and get to act off of that. And then you see that just plays into the themes of love and makes those all the more prevalent, because George and Amalia want to be in love so bad, and then they're faced with, it's like when you're walking around BYU campus and you see all the couples around and you're like, oh, like, it's exactly that, which makes the themes hit a lot harder. I thought they used the ensemble in really interesting ways. You also have, I would say, very good production value. They had the spinning set, which was very cool to see and kind of set up the setting and helped us understand the characters better. The use of it's kind of their little cheeky way to show the seasons, when it was like fall, winter, and they would just like throw snow or leaves into the air, which kind of brings us into this like all happy world that we're in for She Loves Me, where everything is romantic and beautiful. That kind of cheeky little nod kind of set the tone, and that was similar to everything else that they used to create their theatrical contract and what they did to create their show. Okay, moving on to My Robot. How might this performance differ when watched as a performance versus read as a script? How could this help us understand Taylor's work on the archive and the repertoire? This show would be massively different and would not have near the same impact that it did on stage, especially since this is made for kids. If I had been reading this like a script, it would read like a Dr. Seuss book, and I would just like flip through it because I would get through it in like 20 minutes and be like, okay. But then seeing it as an actual show, you see the impact and you see like the feeling and the heart of this piece. I think the archive or the repertoire of this really brought that into fruition. It would not have had the same impact because I would have just been reading the words and I wouldn't have seen the heartfelt nature of even these like very simple topics, like how they discussed how everyone is made of pieces. I wouldn't have, with seeing the actual thing live and seeing how that progressed in the story, I kind of was like, oh, that's such a simple theme, but like so true. And I feel the truth of that because of how it was performed. If I had just read that, I would have been like, okay, so that's what they're trying to do with the script. Nice. So the repertoire enhanced the performance for me. That was lit. Which character do I relate to most or least? How might relating to this character shape my identity and goals? When I was thinking about this question, I was like, well, all these are like 9-year-olds and I'm not like them a lot. But as I was thinking about it further, I was thinking about how Ophelia leaves her home and comes into this new world where things are different and she's kind of, scared, and then she comes to understanding of the world around her. And with moving into college this semester, that's kind of been like me, and you leave pieces of yourself behind, but you realize that it doesn't mean that they're any less important or haven't had an impact on you. So I feel like I related to her kind of journey and coming to love the network that you be a part of and coming to accept change. So all those kind of values I related to, and it also makes me want to, because there's still some nights where I'm like, oh my gosh, I miss my family and miss my old life and whatnot. So goals for the future, I want to come to, really, and I do love my life right now, but it makes me want to like fully commit and find all the ways to enjoy and grow through this still kind of adjustment period. Even though I already haven't been here like a couple months. Anyway, number 3, for my robot. How can this theatrical performance become an act of service to a specific community? What values does it reveal? Okay, so this is obviously made for kids. And so in that way, it introduces, because for some of these kids, it's going to be their first experience with theater, and having theater that's tailored for kids and accessible for kids is such a valuable service to them, because then they are going to be able to understand stories. You take a kid to go see, Civil War, the musical, they're not going to get the same thing out of it, and they might be a little scared. That's not their age range. But having theater for the young companies, tailored this for kids. They've made it interesting for kids. Creating a love of stories and theater creates empathy for these kids. I'm a firm believer that theater is a builder of confidence. So if these kids get involved in theater, that's so beneficial. Social skills, stories, all of that is so incredibly helpful for society and kids in general. So it's an act of service to be able to create a performance that is so tailored for them, and all the kids that I saw there were clearly having a fun time, so clearly they're doing their job. And I think that's so smart and wonderful, because children are so important, and they're, need to be fostered to grow into amazing little humans. So I loved both of these productions. It was a great, grand experience.